Hey, it's Melissa Moore, and welcome to Melissa's Mile High Kitchen. Here we are at the Mountain High Appliance Studio in Littleton, Colorado, and we're in the gorgeous Gaggenau kitchen. We've been here before. This is one of my favorites, and I love the wallpaper, I gotta tell you. All right, so up today on Melissa's Mile High Kitchen, we are making a gluten-free and a dairy-free chocolate chip pie. And if you're from the South or the Midwest, you're like, I think this sounds familiar. Yeah, this is my mom's recipe, kind of redone so that it's gluten-free and dairy-free. And it's also got a homemade pie crust. And I've had so many people ask me, well, how do you do a homemade gluten-free and dairy-free pie crust and make it flaky? Make it so that it doesn't just taste, gummy and all the things that I think sometimes people think, ooh, that's gluten-free, that's not gonna be good. I took this to a dinner party recently. Nobody had any idea it was gluten and dairy free until after. I didn't want to tell them ahead of time because I'm like, people have these preconceived notions. So anyway, we're gonna jump into it, but I have to say thank you to Mountain High Appliance. Their showrooms are gorgeous here in Colorado. If you're watching outside of Colorado, mountainhighappliance.com, you can find them online. And if you haven't taken a minute to subscribe to Melissa's Mile High Kitchen on YouTube, please do that. That would just mean the world to me if you can do that. All right, let's start out now. Now, I'm wearing a rock and roll t-shirt today. The thing that I don't always mention is that I host a morning show here in Denver, Colorado on Cool 105, Melissa Moore in the Morning. So I've been in music my whole life and I've been baking my whole life. So we're just gonna kind of combine the two here. All right, let's start off with that pie crust. In here, I've got 1 1/4 cups of gluten-free flour blend. I went with the Bob's Red Mill flour. That is one of my favorite all-purpose flours. So when it comes to cookies and some baking, you'll see that I do that. So the next thing to make a great pie crust, you've got to have cold butter. So I just took this out just minutes ago before we shot anything. I'm going to cut this butter into some smaller pieces. All right, and put it right in with the flour. So we're going to be cutting it into the flour. And there's an old-fashioned way that my grandma did. And you can actually use 2 knives and you go like this, different directions, and you do all of that. That is a great way to do it. The other thing is I decided, you know what? Yes, I can do it that way, but there's also known, and these are like old-fashioned, but they're a pastry blender, pastry knife, pastry blender. I got mine off Amazon, super cheap. So what I'm gonna do, okay, I want you to see what I'm doing here, is I am taking this pastry blender all throughout the flour. And what you're trying to do is get the butter in the flour and have it look so it's a little bit kind of like a pea size. And you'll see what I'm talking about here. And there's no easy way that's not messy. So you can kind of see what's happening here to the butter. The cold butter helps make the crust flaky. Getting it into little smaller pieces is so that the butter is evenly distributed. Now I keep saying butter, but it is a gluten-free, dairy-free butter. The one I use all the time is this Country Crock home-style dairy-free butter. It's been my favorite. They're not paying me, so that's just the way it is. But I love it. Okay, so as you can tell, now all the flour, all the butter's been cut into little tiny pieces. So the next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna add 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Salt goes in there. 1 tablespoon of sugar. That just kind of gives it that nice, sweet, stir those up again. All right. Now we are gonna do an egg white. And there are different ways to do an egg white. There's little machines. I just do this. This is what we do. We just make it easy. All right. You can keep the yolk if you want. I tossed mine. Otherwise, keep it if somebody in your family can eat it. Absolutely. So there's the 1 egg white. Then we're doing 1/2 teaspoon, just 1/2 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. All right, so I've got some water in here. I want it extra cold. So what I did is I just put a couple ice cubes in there. And the key for the pie crust is that you're gonna add the water slowly. I know for sure I need 1 tablespoon of cold water. All right, so we're gonna do that. Now, most likely I'm gonna need 2 because I did it last night and it was 2. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that just because I kind of know what I'm gonna need here. So it's 1 to 2, depending where you are. Best way to get this pie crust going, and I mean it's messy, is doing it by hand. So you're mixing in the egg yolk, you're mixing in the cold water, and that butter that we cut in is helping to get that pie crust nice and sticky. Now this is the recipe for 1 pie crust. So yes, the gluten-free dough is sticky. And here is why it has to go into the refrigerator. And I will tell you this, you can put it in there for 20 minutes to an hour. You don't want to leave it in there too long because the last thing you want is your pie crust to dry out too much. I always wrap it like this. So I am just going to wrap the ball just like this. And then I'm going to put this in the refrigerator. So to the base of this chocolate chip pie, Toll House pie, whatever you want to call it, the base of this is going to be 1 cup of gluten-free, dairy-free butter. So what you've done with this butter is you've melted it in the microwave and then you've let it cool. That is a huge part of this butter. All right, so I need 3. It turns out to be about 1/3 of a cup, by the way. Oh, the shell on this one did not do well. He's not my friend. All right, naughty shell. All right, there we go. So that is 3 egg whites right there. Okay, so you've got your egg whites. Now what you want to do is get your mixer ready. Put them in there. Then I'm going to use this attachment. So it really is kind of personal preference. I find this works a little bit faster. There we go. Lock it in. That would be smart. All right. Here we go. All right, so I've got it up to like a medium-high speed right now. And once again, I just want the eggs to get foamy. That's all I'm looking for here are foamy eggs. Once again, you're not making meringue, so you don't want stiff peaks on these eggs. So you've got foamy eggs right now. All right, so now I'm done with this. I'm gonna take that off. For the rest of the pie, I'm gonna use this, just so you know. I know, you're like, flour right into the eggs. Yep, that's exactly what we're doing. Just dump it in there. I am really all about easy recipes. All right, so we've got that in there. There we go, locked it into place. So eggs and flour are going. Next thing we're gonna do is add in that 1/2 cup of brown sugar. And it's all, everything's already pre-measured here. So I'm gonna get this going now. Okay, 1/2 cup brown sugar, 1/2 cup of sugar. All right, we're getting all of that blended in there with the egg whites. And if you're wondering about the butter, it is coming. It is absolutely coming. 1 teaspoon of vanilla now. All right, and now we're gonna add that 1 cup of dairy-free butter. Give it a stir. Dairy-free butter, just like regular butter, kind of separates if it's been sitting for a little bit. All right, so we're mixing the butter in there, nice and slow. All right, there's your 1 cup of butter. Let's make sure we get it all. All right, and if you look at the batter, you're like, ooh, that looks way too thin. You wanna make sure your brown sugar pieces, if you have it, like mine sat out here for a couple of minutes before we started filming the show. So I see a couple pieces in there I'm gonna bust up, but normally if you take it right out of the bag, it should always be fresh and soft. If you clump it together in your hand, it should hold the form. If you ever get brown sugar out and it's hard as a rock, don't use it. They say the trick is to put a piece of bread in with the brown sugar and it will absorb it. I've done it before. I remember my mom doing it. It does work. So what you want that all mixed up. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do here, make a little room. Let's move all this out of the way. So make it easier to see. All right, to the eye. Oh, okay, perfect. All right, So next thing we're gonna do is chop up half a cup of nuts. Nut of your choice is what I say. I like pecans. Oh my gosh, look at all that gunk in my ring there. I'm gonna be soaking that tonight. All right, so I like pecans. So you can buy chopped nuts, or I like them like this. And this is all I do. So I've got a big chef's knife. I've got half a cup of pecans, and you're just constantly making passes over the nuts. If you are allergic to nuts, take them out. Take them out. You can even add a little more chocolate chip because the recipe calls for 1 cup of chocolate chips and half a cup of nuts. If you are taking the nuts out, I would just do 1.5 cups of chocolate chip. You could even do kind of a mixture of mini chips and big chips if you just want to make it look a little different. If you don't like pecans, walnuts are fine. I've never done macadamia nuts or anything like that, but these are the ones I think you always see for baking. All right, so these are kind of a rough cut. I'm not making them fine, but I don't want any giant pieces. All right, so you kind of get an idea. One more pass here with the knife. Do. Here we go. All right, there we go. Okay, so now we've got our nuts. We've got our 1 cup of chocolate chips, and we're gonna add this to the batter. All right, just throwing those in there. Easy peasy. All right, there we go. And we're gonna mix it on stir. So this is, there we go. We're just stirring that in there, slowly adding the chocolate chips. And you will see how much thicker the batter is now. Because at first when you had just the egg whites and then the flour and the sugars and the vanilla, you're like, that looks a little thin. Nope, it's now perfect. And it's funny when I bring this pie, and this is one of those great pies that you can bring for a dessert. Like I said, I was just at a dinner party the other night. And I was like, all right, what can I bring? And they're like, bring a dessert. And I love bringing desserts because it gives me a chance to do something, because they know it's going to be dairy-free. Because, you know, having celiac disease, if I go to dinner at somebody's house, even though I always feel like I'm the pain in the butt friend that has to do that, and say, yeah, does anybody have any allergies? Yeah, I've got celiac. I can't have any gluten. And so if they ask me to bring something, they know it's going to be gluten-free. And so I think they knew it, but they forgot. And everybody's oohing and awing over this pie. It really is easy. That's another thing I love about it. And I was like, yeah, gluten-free and dairy-free. So once again, the pie, as you can tell, just kind of looking at the dough, it's like a cookie dough, but not as dry. And that's where when you serve this pie hot, you can serve it hot or cold. When it's hot like this, it's gooey. It almost reminds me of a lava cake a little bit, not quite that gooey, or a gooey brownie versus a dry cake brownie. All right, so we're gonna set that there. And it is time now for me to go and get the pie crust out of the refrigerator. And there's a couple keys for this pie crust. Number 1, gluten-free pie crust is always, always sticky. I will just warn you about that one. It is always gonna be sticky. You can leave it in the fridge longer, but it's just kind of part of the gluten-free pie crust thing. So I ordered this big pastry mat, and I love it because you want a surface that's not gonna stick. The other kind of tool I use a lot is using a parchment paper. So if I really want to make sure that it's not going to stick, I'll roll it out on this parchment paper. And this is my pie tin. So you always say, okay, how big do I need this crust? Well, you need it a little bit bigger than the pie tin. So, and that's the other thing, is you can measure it right on here. So if you put this sucker on here and you're like, yeah, I need a 12-inch pie crust, you know what to roll it out to. All right, so let's go grab that out of the fridge. We'll get going. I've got my extra flour. So generously, you want to get flour on your pastry thing here, all right? So you'll see what I'm talking about with the sticky thing. And I think that is one thing that you kind of learn with gluten-free baking, is it's just a little more trial and error. Nothing is ever 100% perfect. And that's what I really try and I hope to get across here in Melissa's Mile High Kitchen, is like, do your best. You know, we're at, gosh, it's almost So they always say Denver's 5280, 5,280 feet above sea level. We're in Littleton, Colorado at the Mountain High Appliance showroom, and we're higher up. So what that means is that things dry out more, things bake differently, all of it. Okay, so as you saw, what I did is I brought the pie crust right on out, put it on a floured surface, and I kind of start by pushing it into a circle with my hands. All right, but what I'm really trying to do here is just get it not to stick too bad. So here's the other trick I'm gonna do. I'm throwing this now on the parchment paper, and we'll just see. This, all my pies that I have been doing lately, the pie crust turns out amazing, but unlike flour, like normal flour, where you can fold it and you make it into a quarter, you lay it into the pan, you unfold it, and it's perfect. Gluten-free does not roll like that. All right, so let's see. If we're using that looks about right to me. I'm sure there's a more technical way you could measure the pie dough, but why? Why do that? Okay, so you will see flipping it over is gonna be a whole ordeal. But first thing I'm gonna do with my pie tin, spray it with some cooking spray. Even though there's a ton of butter in this pie crust. So here's where the not really perfection comes in. Okay, as you can tell, I just flipped over. But see, my aim was a little off. So what we're gonna have to do now, and this is why I'm telling you this is normal. There are people that make pies, will be like, no, it shouldn't do that. It doesn't most of the time. That's why you pay a lot for these in the grocery store. So the nice thing is this dough is moist enough that you've got cracks, things like this just happen, just work with it. And just know that this is totally normal. It's gluten-free pie crust. You're not gonna mess it up. It's just gonna take a few minutes of working it. All right. All right, so what I'm doing right now is just kind of crimping the edges here. And there are people who do really pretty designs on the edges. God love you if you're one of those people. I obviously, it's truly, I mean, this is why I say, I'm not a professional, and you're like, yeah, we know. But what I do is just try to make food that you're gonna enjoy, your family can enjoy, it's not gonna break the bank. And I think it's gotta be food, and I always say this, it's gotta be food that tastes good. All right, so we've got the pie crust done now. In Melissa's messy mile-high kitchen, we can see the mess that I've made, but you want that oven at 350 when you put this in. Once again, you're not pre-baking the pie crust. I did that one time and my daughter was like, Mom, it's hard as a rock. I'm like, I think it's supposed to be that way. No, it wasn't. It was not. All right, so we're gonna put the batter in. Okay. All right, batter is now in, and what you're doing is just smoothing it out. So you can see as you're looking at this, you can see the nuts, the chocolate chips. I mean, it looks like a giant cookie, and it's similar. All right, so once that's all done, you are sticking this in the oven. It's gonna go in for 60 to 70 minutes, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna check it, and what you really want is that knife to come out clean. If it has a little chocolate on it, that's fine. But you know from checking cakes and everything else, you just want it to set up nicely. 60 minutes, that's about average, 350. If you are at 0 sea level, you can drop that temperature down to 325, but here in Colorado, we're gonna do 350. All right, so the pie is done. It's been 60 minutes at 350. Let's get it out and see how it looks. Love this Gaggenau kitchen here at the Mountain High Appliance showroom in Littleton. It is one of those wonderful kitchens, and Gaggenau's been making kitchens since something like the 1800s. Now I wanted to show you, this is the one that just came out of the oven. This is the one that I made last night, and there's a difference when you serve them, and it's all about just kind of the melted gooiness. So we'll take a look here. And I will try not to burn myself. All right. Once again, this is the gluten-free, dairy-free chocolate chip pie. The recipe is going to be up on, if you want to go to melissamooremedia.com. Look at that. You can see that. How gorgeous does that look? All right. So there's that one. You can see it's a little gooier. The crust is super flaky. Now let me show you the difference if you let it sit overnight or even put it in the refrigerator. All right. Let me get out this next piece. So once again, it holds up kind of like a cookie. It's just not the gooiness. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about flaky pie crust. Can I say that? Flaky pie crust. A little tongue twister there for you. That's what you want. You don't want pie crust that doesn't come off in layers and that isn't flaky. Same thing over here. I mean, you can just see this, how great and flaky that is. And I'm telling you, you will take this to any party and they're gonna love it. All right, let's try a bite here. This is the warm one. And you know I have a habit of eating things too hot. So good. Right, well, now I have to try the other one. Okay. And like I said, these are really, really rich. I do really like it when it's been sitting. All right. So now I have 2 bites of pie in my mouth. I never plan this very well, do I? No. Both delicious. And like I said, this is great the next morning with coffee. This is fantastic to take to a party. Hopefully I don't have chocolate all over my teeth. And the crust, I mean, look at that crust. Gluten-free, dairy-free, flaky. This crust is the best pie crust, and I absolutely love it. For all these recipes, go to melissamoremedia.com. Also, the videos, you're watching it right now. If you haven't subscribed, would you take just a moment to do so? Melissa Moore's Kitchen, Melissa's Mile High Kitchen, or Melissa Moore's Kitchen, but it's Melissa's Mile High Kitchen on YouTube. Subscribe, watch these. I've got other great recipes up as well that I'd love to have you check out, and then you'll get alerts whenever there's a new recipe. Thank you so much to my friends here at Mountain High Appliance Studio. We're at the beautiful Gaggenau showroom right here in Littleton, Colorado. And Gaggenau is not the only kitchen they have. They have decor, they have GE Monogram, they've got KitchenAid, they've got some beautiful Jenn-Air kitchens as well. You definitely need to come and see them here at Mountain High Appliance. And they've got showrooms in Longmont, they've got showrooms right here in Littleton, and mountainhighappliance.com. I will see you, if not on the radio. Remember, I do Melissa Moore in the morning on Cool 105. I will see you here next time. Have a great day, be kind, have a great week.